Looks like we're live.
Looks
It
good.
is. I have to turn off the audio before I start talking again. Otherwise, it gets more complicated because then my mic will pick up me talking back to me. So and I'm handing you the con. Chris, you've got it.
Got
Just
it.
confirm.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So welcome everybody to an evening session of about once a month. I think we're going to end up doing these evening ones, maybe more. We have talked about it would be, see, now Grant's going to have to tell us whether it's better for it to be in the morning, in the middle of the night, or in the middle of the day, because in the middle of the day there's a lot of, Tex also has to tell us, between Tex and Grant, like, is it easier in the middle of the day when you've got a bunch of other things going on, or the middle of the night when nothing's going on? That's the question for you guys to consider,
I know,
in this.
and the hard thing is too, now that with the kids home as well, it's all it's there's stuff happening all the time. Whereas at night it's nice and quiet, and I can just ease into it, nothing else
Exactly.
happening.
I was having a few drinks before our last evening's one, so we're a little bit clear-headed today by comparison.
Very good. So if this is the first time you've come here, this is an evening one. We normally do these at in the morning. And if you're wondering why there are some people that are in the attendee and some in the panelist, it's specifically so that we get this kind of all populated before we go live and before we start to stream. So this all happens early on. Now, typically, what happens is we open the door at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and people kind of come in. We all sit around and chit chat, and then we start really talking about things around 7 or 7:05 after I do these little announcements. So anyway, so you can if you come in early, we'll all give you a hard time about your camera, and then eventually let you in. So you can come in early and kind of figure that out if you'd like to. If you are in the attendee section, there's a little button at the bottom that says Q&A. If you want to ask a question, and all questions are welcome, you can click on that Q&A at the bottom and ask those questions there. You can use the chat for chatting, but not for questions. It's really hard if you start putting questions into the chat. If you're a panelist, then you just raise your little digital hand, and under no circumstances do you try to answer people's questions in the Q&A with text, because if you do that, then I don't see it. It just disappears. And so it's a limitation of the current system that we're working on right now. So just know that don't do that part. So I'll do that part. So anyway, so that gets you kind of set up there. If you do want to come in and be part of this panel, you need to be here by 6:45 in the morning. We will do this one tomorrow morning, regular time. This evening one is kind of like a special. So definitely take that into account. A couple things coming up. We have tomorrow we're going to talk about building kits, everything from like laptops with a couple little things plugged into them up to broadcast trucks. So there'll be lots of pictures. There's a couple of us that have built a bunch of these kits, and so we're all gonna be chit-chatting about what we think about and how we approach building kits to do a variety of different productions. The Friday we're gonna start a conversation about education. So it's just kind of this isn't the big education talk that we want to do at some point. This is just us. Let's just talk about what the challenges are and what we think is possible around distance learning. And so it's kind of that'll be, and both of those will be in the second, which is now becoming the third hour of the system, which is 8 to 9 o'clock. So 8 to 9 o'clock, we'll talk about building kits on Thursday, talk about education on Friday. And then on Saturday, Saturdays have become kind of a long day, so a long morning. So we're going to basically start up at 6, chit chat. Then our morning session tends to last a little longer on Saturdays, 7 to 9. And then at 9, I'm going to talk about compositing in the ATEM switcher. We're going to have Final Cut Pro secrets with Steve Bays, like we did last week. Feels like last year, but last week, which was amazing. And I think that we'll be able to do that again. We're going to cover Mimo Live again, which is going to be at 11 with Oliver Breidenbach. And I'm going to put into the section here that the link. You can still get a 90-day version if you fill that out there. That we are going to take that down at the end of this week. So after we do the class, once we opened up on Saturday, we're not going to keep on distributing that link. So if you want to download that, then you need to do it sooner than later. And then after Oliver and after talking about Mimo Live, we're going to talk about photogrammetry again. We got pretty far. What I want to do is kind of look at how people did. So if you came to the class and you haven't shot any photogrammetry, you still have 2 days. You still have 2 days to go out and shoot some stuff, try to create some models, fail a couple times, succeed a couple times, and come with questions. So we're going to have a couple of people that know a little bit about it. So and then we're still working on what we're doing next week. Because I had this production that we did today, I'm a little behind. So we'll have more information by the weekend over that. There is a website. It doesn't do anything yet, but if you go to gearmedia.tech, there's a website. The button doesn't, if you hit it, it won't email to anyone right now. I put it up this afternoon because I was just like, okay, I got to get through the process of connecting the DNSs and everything else. And so it's there. And there'll be more by the end of the weekend. And we're also, a couple of us are meeting to talk about the Discord tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have Discord up by the weekend. So we're kind of all in action on those 2 action items. Finally, if you want to share this, if you want to tell anyone else about it, you're more than welcome to share this link out. I just put the link in there. The big thing is I'm trying to figure out, is this going to be something we do during quarantine, or is this something that we keep doing ongoingly or grow it into something else, and so on and so forth. So the size and the number of people here will have a direct impact on that. So if you want to share it with anybody, go ahead and do that. And if you aren't sure or don't want to, then don't. But our goal is to get more people like you. We want the right people to join, and those are typically people like the people who are already here. So anyway, share that if you feel like it. Did people get an email today? Raise your hand. You all got the email. Okay. That was our first experiment with MailChimp. The list has gotten too big. So the list is about 725 or 730 people. And so it's gotten too big to do it in Gmail. Like you can't, you have to break it up into all these little pieces. And so we finally figured out how to get the MailChimp thing working. So I'm glad you guys got that email. So you'll get them. I'm not prolific. So you'll notice that my emails tend to be fairly terse because that's the way I like to read them. And I will avoid sending them out to you more than on average about once a week. You might get an odd extra one as I figure out exactly what day I should send it out. But I'm not. You get ones every day to remind you that the event's going on. But outside of that, you won't get very much. So anyway, the first question from TJ Heidemann said, "Whatever happened to Lightro's cinema camera and all the tech that they were supposed to be working on? I remember the promo was impressive." Lightro was way ahead of their time, and they raised a whole bunch of money. So what Lightro did was they really understood light fields. So you take a picture, and it was really gathering all of this data about, and the reality is a lot of what it does is what our camera phones do now. So it's not the same. It's not the same, but our cameras are approximating a lot of what Lightro was trying to do. They just did it in an absolute sort of way, which is basically they're able to, use all that data coming in and really know where all the points out in front are. And once you have once you have all that data, it's not LiDAR, it's a different type of thing, but it's a depth field, basically, of the scene that is around them. You can do a lot of things, interesting compositing, where you can just composite things behind something else because you know where it is. And so I think that what kind of killed them is they never got anything that was really usable by the average person. So they ended up they had a little camera. I got one around here somewhere. I bought one. I found it in the garage. I was spelunking in the garage the other day. It still feels like spelunking because I just have random boxes full of weird things, and I found a Lightro, and I was like, oh, I knew I had one around here somewhere. And so
was it a camera, or was it just a lens? I could have sworn it was just a lens.
It was like a little box. It took pictures. It was a little box. It's a camera, and it took pictures, like a little piece there. And you take pictures, and they were little, but you could change the focus, and you could do a lot of cool things.
Yeah, I remember
with them.
it was a way cool demo. But
right.
You're right. Like I don't remember hearing anything afterwards.
Well, the problem is they had something that was too small, and then they had something that was way too big. So they went the other direction. Like, we want to take this technology and we want to put it into making it available for film cameras. We're only going to rent it because it was so expensive. You couldn't even think about buying what they were doing. It was generating this massive amount of data that was going to be there, but the problem was the data was heavy. It was hard to work with, and I don't think they were really getting the kind of quality. There's a lot of problems with depth-based, pieces that we're going to constantly see for a little while longer. Now, Canon just announced that they're doing basically something similar with their new cameras. So their camera technology is supposed to be, they said 3 seconds. Is that right? 3 seconds to convert to a
3 seconds to convert.
Yeah. And that's with multiple cameras, right? I mean, they're using a multi-camera system.
I don't know the Canon one. The Lytro one was really cool because essentially it wasn't just capturing a single point. The interesting part here, it was actually capturing the vectors of the light as it came in. So it didn't capture light as a two-dimensional object. It captured rays on different vertices and different angles. And it's really cool. They end up getting sold to Google, ended up buying them out. Google bought the remainder. And if you, I've talked about it before, but if you go take a look at the guys from Lightfield Labs, they're essentially extending that idea. They're working on the display side of that. And that was what was missing from Lytro. It's like, hey, great, I can capture this light in this dimensionality, and I can actually move my perspective in real time, but there's no way to display it. The Lightfield Labs guys are using Otoy and a bunch of stuff from those guys to actually go, let's actually have a format to actually be able to derive that stuff so you can drive it into an actual holographic image. What's really cool is you were talking about UDTZ. No, what's
USDZ? USDZ.
So that's a simplified form of what Jules and the guys at Otoy have done with their specification. And we're going to get into a place where I have to be very cautious when I say, I think it's really cool. And I think 10 years from now, when we can pass that kind of data, you're going to have a completely different immersive experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And some of the stuff that samples we've probably both seen that you can, some of the stuff that I've seen is boxing matches in little closed areas turn out to be really good for this kind of thing because there's a lot of data all in one place and you get a bunch of cameras around it. And now you can just stand out there while the boxers are boxing and you're like standing with them. Now this is in VR. This is a VR solution. The other place that has been really interesting is being able to stand on a football field and see football players. Like you can be a football player. And just see what that perspective is. And there are very few things that change how you view a game more than like being the quarterback for a minute and being attached to their head. And it's a little unnerving. You don't get the rotation, but you get to move with them and so on and so forth. And if you're in VR, it can make you sick pretty quickly. But if you get glimpses of that, or if you're able to stand at least where they are, and you realize why they have to be 6'5", like why a quarterback has to be 6'5" because they can't see over anything. And you have to be able to see down the field. And there's all these things there's all these issues. It really makes the whole game completely different. Now, what I think is interesting is that I don't think that the future for a lot of these things, or at least the immediate future, is putting that on for 2 hours. I think that what's interesting about it is being able to see it for 2 minutes. Just having this experience for 2 minutes that completely changes how you watch. You go back to the 2D, solution is where we're going to see. I think that come up first. Not very much. Someday maybe we'll be in it. Maybe we're in it now. Who knows? Chris Summers. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I work with a lot of people who actually derive those multiple viewpoints, and they also try to do the immersive part to go along as a sidecar with the main programming. And they all kind of hate it. The reason why you'll hear me talk about Lightfield is they're doing it without the headset.
Right.
Sorry, I'll shut up now.
No, absolutely. Chris Summers, you were saying?
Yeah, I'm wondering how far away we are from light field capture as something on cinema cameras. If we're sitting
that's
there,
where
if I can do it on my iPhone and recreate a scene in 3D in a matter of moments, why can't how far away?
Well, that's where Lytro was a couple years.
Yeah.
I mean, Lytro was doing that with their cinema cameras. The problem was it was just too heavy. It was too much data. It was too much, so the idea of doing that. In fact, I saw demos of that 25 years ago at, video shows. They would show depth-based capture. And then you also have flash LiDAR, which is basically grabbing LiDAR data at 30 frames a second. And that's, it's still rough. Like when you look at it, it doesn't have the fidelity we would expect with film. But we all, books were horrible when we first started making them, and you had to like put the print together and with little pieces of metal, and then you had to do the thing, and so you always have to remember that it takes time. It takes time for this to progress, and so we're looking at it in a very rough way, but definitely capturing that data is coming fast. Jem, you were gonna say?
I'm just wondering how long you think it's going to be before we see it in smartphones, because obviously we see it for stills, portrait mode, but for video, are we 2-3 years away? Because I think that's almost more important than cinema cameras. Because if I can shoot and simulate a 1.4 to a 2.8 on a smartphone, then that changes some things as well. Any thoughts?
I think it's 3 years max. And it could be any time. Like, I think that it's just processor speed at this point. It's already doing it for stills, so it's just the ability to do it 30 times a second is really the only thing that it has to do. So I don't think it's just processor speed and buffer, for it to do what it's doing now. I think one of the problems you get into in that calculation is continuity. So it's not only that it has to figure out 30 frames a second, but it has to do it in a way that doesn't have everything vibrate around. I mean, that's the thing you always get into. Anytime you're rendering a bunch of things that we don't think about a lot, it's like one of the things we ran into a long time ago with visual effects is if you use different processors, like any different processor would have a different randomization, and so the grain would be different. So if you calculate a grain or you had any noise being added, it would be different. And you wouldn't notice it. Like when you look at one frame after another, you wouldn't notice it. But when you played them all together, you see these little weird flashes of the grain just changing a little bit was very disorienting. And so you had to get rid of, like if you had a big render farm, you'd have to get rid of everything at one time and replace it all at one time. That's gotten better now. But when you think about that calculation, I think that is one of the things that's a little bit more, more complicated as far as that process. Jason, you were going to say?
So this is largely rhetorical, but it's worth mentioning light field and something like binocular cinema capture, like, Lord of the Rings, where they basically just had two cameras that were completely off axis, at a set degree, are not the same thing.
Well, and you're also seeing the other thing to look at is if we look at what was happening with The Irishman, right? The Irishman is you have a couple witness cameras that were set to infrared that are grabbing an enormous amount of basically photogrammetry data to get to hand that back. Now, I will say that personally, I think that I don't know if you guys saw the side by side where they talked about deep fake Irishman versus 3D Irishman, and I think most of the time I think that the deep fake, most of the shots looked better. I think that the problem was you probably could never repeat that for every angle at every point. I mean, a lot of that cherry picked.
Really
But the deep
good
fake,
job.
if you look at deep fake Irishman, you'll see some really interesting, because that's just using AI to, figure out how I'm going to move this over to that. And I think that it looked better. Now, Scorsese says that he put some of the way that De Niro looked was specific to how he wanted him to look when he was young, not the way he was when he was young. But I still think it was kind of an interesting thing. By the way, in the Q&A, and I'll put this in the chat, Brent posted a picture for a Kickstarter. Hold on, that was for Lightfield. So this came out almost a month ago, and it shows the generation of depth maps from a lens. So definitely check that out. There's a little bit of a Kickstarter there. I don't know how much the Kickstarter is. I can't find the price. They moved it around. Oh, it's an ad. Anyway, so not an ad, but an article. I was thinking that it was the actual Kickstarter thing. But anyway, so the definitely check that out. Colin, you were going to say?
I was just thinking about the application of light field for cinema production level work. Do you envision something like, and I don't know if Lightro envisioned something like that, as enhancement of the data available to an editor and to provide a standard cinema experience to a shared audience, or were they just envisioning a single participant maneuvering within the light field data as you described for the football game or the
I think that it's less maneuvering, but I do think there are things that I've seen with just 6DoF where you just being able to move your head around a little bit and have the screen give you a little bit more dimension. when it's done at high resolution, it's interesting. Like there's definitely a thing, and we, what we want to think about is not where it is today, but where in 10 years with more processing and more tries, if you imagine an 8K image running at 120 frames a second, HDR with a little bit of parallax, and you're talking about a window in your house that your brain will have a hard time distinguishing from reality.
Right, but that's a single viewer experience, and that was the thought experiment I was going with, moving cinema quality production to single viewer experiences.
It may be, but it may be just everyone sees a slightly different angle of the movie. Like if you're sitting there, it's like a play. When you're in a play, you look at it in different. You're sitting in different places, and you have a different view. If you're sitting on the couch farther over, your version of it's just a little over there. And so
you can project it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, or you could center it, depending on how you did prisms, you could center that process. And so, and some people will hate it. They'll think it's the worst thing that ever happened to cinema, but it'll be a switch that you can put on your thing eventually. And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, I think
that's how 3D works anyway. Like, if you go all the way to the back of a THX theater and you're watching with those goofy 3D goggles, it doesn't look right because the parallax is off.
Well, there's all kinds of problems.
But it's a fixed parallax in that case.
Well, there's so many things about when you see true 3D shot with two cameras that are, the lenses are either next to each other or through a mirror are lined right up. It's stunning.
Oh yeah, in that case, it's really good.
We
Lord of the Rings did it, and it was fantastic.
Well, what I'm saying though is that even Lord of the Rings and even Avatar, by the time it's processed and by the time it gets to a theater and everything else, it's all munged down. So it's good. Like Avatar was really good. I think Lord of the Rings, I didn't see Lord of the Rings in 3D. By then I had given up. I was like, I'm not going to watch any more 3D in theaters. And so, but what we did is there's a couple things we did is we didn't really really push hard. And Marty can probably talk more to, is Marty still here or did he leave? Oh, there he is. Marty knows a lot about 3D, but I think that when you have a rig that really does it, when you look at it, it just jumps out and it's just amazing. And it's this incredible experience. You just never see that in the theater, because you're using a more expensive, you're seeing the raw uncompressed version. You're seeing more expensive, you're looking through more expensive glasses than they could ever give to you. It's a standardized display that is built for those glasses. So there's a whole bunch of things that make that a better experience. So the raw experience is great. What really ruined it was, okay, we're going to put everybody on cards, like we're going to rotoscope, rotoscoping of course is, cutting everybody out and then putting them in planes and then painting it all back in.
The 3D intermediate, that's bad.
We're going to cache. And basically it was, you have filmmakers, directors that don't want to do 3D, but film owners, there are those studio owners that want to make the money on 3D, and so they just said, we'll just make it 2.5D, and sell it as 3D. And then what happens is people go, well, this stinks, and that's the hard part with. I think that's the hard part for VR as well, is there's just a lot of bad content. I mean, I feel like if every game in VR played like Robo Recall, people would use it all the time. I don't know if you guys have played Robo Recall, but
it's awesome.
Chris, you were gonna say Chris Summers.
Yeah, I've worked on a 3D production before where we were using Paradise FX rigs, which were sort of like hacked together, but amazing stuff. That was a Dread 3D, the latest Dread, which was a few years ago. But right. To come back to Colin's question, I've worked on productions before where we've used VR, and possibly this sort of technology coming in, which would be used for promotional purposes for the show, as opposed to necessarily the initial cinema production right now. I see that's how it's entering, more for promotion, doing VR.
And I would argue that what we're missing right now with a lot of the stuff that we're doing with the content is, I wouldn't even call it promotional, but what I would call it is ancillary content that deepens the story that you have. And we're not seeing any of that right now. And it's a huge loss. So we're going to spend all this money on this production. And I feel like you could have released, so let's say you have Mandalorian, or you have Game of Thrones. What if there were other pieces of content that are getting released all week that if you don't watch them, no loss, you'll still understand what happened, but it deepens your understanding of that character. It's extra scenes, because we all know that a bunch of scenes get cut out, why aren't we using those scenes somewhere? Why don't we tell a little bit more of a story? Because like and like one little thing getting cut out. If you look at the last Hellboy, and you go into the extras, and you watch the open that was originally there, and they cut out about 20 seconds out of that open, and it changed the entire meaning of the whole movie. like it's just like, so when you watch it, it was like you would never know that there was a whole twist at the very beginning that they had in there. And so you could do all of these really interesting things, and all the behind the scenes and VR experiences, and like take this one scene that we just spent a bunch of money on. Let's put a VR experience in and have 3 or 4 of those that are there. And so one piece of content. And then to get back to something we were talking about earlier is, if I was Apple, if I was paying for it, it's my nickel. You're gonna edit at least 5 scenes of every movie in Final Cut. You don't have to edit the whole movie. I'm not gonna make you do that, but I'm gonna say you're gonna edit 5 scenes, 5 full scenes in Final Cut, and those are gonna get released. And they can be the ones without the key actors. Like they're just some scene. They can be something that you don't have to deal with. All the stuff that you have to deal with. But the point is that
have you seen the 3 Blade Runner? Like
sorry,
the 3 prequels they had for Blade Runner.
Yes, yes.
3 or 4 of them. Before the story came up, like 10 years connecting the old story with the new one. That was a massive opportunity, and they took it. It's just a pity that didn't do well in the box office.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, the first one didn't do well at the box office either. Come back to me in 20 years, we'll see how it did.
But the big thing is that we're now in an era where who cares about the box office? Like the box office doesn't even exist anymore.
There hasn't
right now.
even been a box office for a month. Like who cares?
But this is in a streaming world. We don't. The idea is like I can release a high level product. I'm thinking I have a whole bunch of other products that are around that product, because all I'm trying to do is make it worth your $4.99 or $7.99 or $9.99. If there's a whole bunch of ancillary products, the problem is they don't even have an interface for that. If you go to Apple TV Plus and you go to Netflix, their interface for finding movies barely works. Let alone finding ancillary parts of the movies. So I think that's a big challenge. But I think that there are so many places where we could see extra content. And again, live streams. One of the things that we did with Nat Geo is we had these shows that were happening right after their special. So they would do a special on Sunday night and then immediately come to us. And the people who are in the documentary are now there answering questions from the audience, talking to some of the people that were there, having a roundtable discussion. And so there was all this stuff that we were able to bring in and give you a reason to watch it. And also, if you're really into it, again, deepen that connection to that process. And so I think that there's just a ton of those, and they're not like the stupid Hollywood ones that they did after Game of Thrones, where they would talk about that was like the worst of that kind of idea, in that process. So
hey, Alex?
We're kind of running into the same thing we ran into with 3D, that the creatives aren't tuned up yet to the new technology. That with 3D, very few people really knew how to use 3D. Right.
And how to think about it. And you don't want to make a movie that feels like a roller coaster, but definitely thinking about dimension is a different way of filmmaking, or at least having scenes that occasionally take advantage of that, is definitely more of a challenge. Grant, you were going to say?
Yeah, a bunch of things, but I think something with 3D was I do a lot of live surgery, live streaming, and so one of the surgeons is saying, can we do 3D? And so I'm like, well, we can. Now a lot of what they were doing is with a scope inside the patient, and those scopes are getting pretty awesome now too. The 4K.
And this is where they have is this where they have the controller? So they have a controller and they've got the.
There are some robots that do that. So there are some, but this is just a handheld scope that's going in. But they have a 4K monitor, often like a 30-inch monitor in front of them, which works great. But as far as potentially taking that as a 3D image and then trying to add the extra angles that we do to try to give some context of where they are, even just trying to get old 3D camcorders is near impossible.
Well, surely there's a market for this medical equipment, a scope having multiple lenses. I mean,
Yeah.
can't you just,
So they,
or do they
yeah,
have
they-
such a thing?
yeah, they do. Yeah. So
Oh,
they
yeah,
have
they
a-
definitely have it, but the idea is that if you want to do a third, if you want to do an angle that's exterior from that scope, so that you can see what they're doing or get it, then you have to start adding those. And the problem you get into when you start cutting between cameras that no one thinks about immediately is convergence and interaxial distance. And so
Yeah,
so you
cutting
have
3D would be hard.
well, the issue is that when number one is a lot of times when we're doing 3D, we'll exaggerate the interaxial distance or interocular, what would be the interocular distance, because that makes it feel more 3D on a wide shot or a big shot. But the issue is that so you have A, the interaxial distance, and B, your convergence. Your eyes are not always parallel. They're converging on something in front of them. So when you start cutting back and forth, you have to be very careful of like for instance, I found that with action films or anything that we were shooting, we built some compositing software for 3D, so I was doing a lot of 3D stuff. So what it would do is do real-time green screen, well, Pixel Conduit that you can download for free now. We'll do 3D compositing, so it'll do real-time green screen removal and compositing, for a 3D source while you're on set, so you can see if the effects are going to work and everything else. Anyway, but what we noticed was you start cutting back, and with a 3D film, you almost wanted to have less happening. Like you didn't want to be like an action film. You don't want tons of cuts because your convergence is going like this and your interaxial is going like this, and you get a headache. Like it's too much. So you have to be very conscious of what you're doing to the interaxial or effectively the interocular and the convergence of that piece. And so because it's a very different effect.
When we
so
were
this
shooting-
goes into another area of yours, and that's education, right? And so particularly this, where you have surgeons training surgeons.
Right.
Now, do they really want to be inside the body, in a 3D experience?
Well, but I think that
could be
one of the things
too
that we
much.
had, well, one of the things that we talked to surgeons about, I was working on a surgeon. I don't do as probably nearly as much as you do, but we were talking to some surgeons about one of theirs, and they wanted to do 3D. So, and the issue was, they said, without the 3D scope, they don't know where they are. Like the identification of what they're doing is easier when they see it in 3D versus 2D. It's just easier to separate out what they're looking at. That is, without depth, it becomes much more difficult in a whole bunch of places. When they open someone up, just knowing what they're looking at, it helps them distinguish what that is based on the 3D information that even the natural eyes get. Andrew Mazepa said interaxial distance is different for everyone, and that is also plays into your head and why some people get sick from 3D films while others are fine, and other people may be closer to the convergent angles used in the film. Yeah. So it's a complicated. I think that all becomes pretty complicated in that process. Another question that we're going to now veer a completely different direction here, which is Philip Ohler. Says clients want to play a pre-recorded video for a live stream. Any recommendations for software that can be used to set this up and scheduled for a YouTube live stream? Prefer it not to be hands-on, set up and let it go. And Jeff Kethley said Restream can handle this easily. So Restream will do playout. You can just put a file up.
Restream has something called Scheduler that will do it. The real issue to know is that it can't be too long, and there's a very specific bit rate and size that it'll just stop you after, even if you've spent a fair bit of money. So, like, for example, 5 gigabytes, I think, for a pro account.
Right. So that's the good note for Restream. We've done that in so many different ways. So I don't, like we've done ones where we replay it in over hours. We've done whole shows that are all day, those types of things. Now we won't put that all in the cloud and just let it run. The easiest way we did it was with elementals. You just load them in. You load all the playouts into the elemental, and then it'll just go through and just play them one at a time. You have to just make sure that you have them all ordered the way you want to have them, as you push them through. And so that was the easiest way for us to do it because they sat in the encoders wherever they were. The next way from there would be to, we have playout systems, whether it's QLab or other things. And the advantage of that is mostly if something goes wrong, you have some way to get to it. The problem with set it and forget it is that if something goes wrong, it's oftentimes a thing that you can't get a hold of. Like it's and a lot of the things that we do that are extra. I was thinking about a lot of this with a bunch of discussions recently, both here and others, of my my sometimes obstinate resistance to software-based solutions for a lot of things, is that my concern is mostly that when something goes wrong, I can't get a hold of it. Like I can't, fix it. Like if a computer goes down and it's doing everything, it's great to have it all in one, but if it goes down, I lose the whole show. I don't lose my playout. Like I don't lose one out of my 4 playouts, I lose the whole show. And it's easy for a software solution to basically, the software can do anything. Like, when we talk about Mimo Live can do an incredible amount of things, but the computer may not be able to. And so you have a piece of software that can actually ask the computer to do more than it's capable of doing. And so with hardware, you end up with a situation where the hardware is difficult. Like there's a lot of wrestling around with the hardware to get it to do it. But once it does it, it does it. Like, like it's going to do the thing that you asked it to do, And so that's the advantage. There was someone on Twitter asking about how to record multiple ISOs, and in software, and I was like, well, I like to capture my ISOs with hardware because I like to have all the frames. I have this thing, like I would like to have all the frames. I very rarely have a software device that will record, unless it's like a production grade and almost as expensive or more expensive than the hardware. Anything like a Wirecast or an OBS or TriCaster or all those things, I know I'm going to get most of the frames, and most of my clients will not notice.
That probably came across as glib, but it's completely true. Like I've had multiple computers crash, and because I'm using HyperDex, it doesn't matter.
Right. I'm not even talking about crashing. I'm just talking about just every once in a while it just doesn't record all the frames. Like it's just, it's like it runs at 29 frames a second or 28 frames a second, and then it catches back up, and it's, there's like if you look at the QuickTime file coming out of a software recorder, a lot of times, especially when it's part of an edit system or part of something, a lot of other things going on, you just see a variance in the frame rate that is not, it's not just 2997 coming out the other end. And so so as a result, like nowadays, what I mostly do is I put the playbacks in ProRes, I put them on a HyperDeck, and they sit there and they wait. But then I always have QLab so that I can, if someone hands me something at the last minute, I can throw it in and hit play. But if I know what the main things are there, I want a hardware playout to just do the thing. And then even then you get caught, with things. So it's
just curious, like if it's a pre-recorded show, what's the advantage of streaming it? Is it more of a marketing thing?
So people will go down this path of doing live playouts, and part of it is the part of it, sometimes they want you to feel like it's live, because and some of the reason you do it is because in some platforms, and it's not really the case anymore, but like for instance, Facebook used to give you if you posted a video, it would go out to X number of people. But if you streamed it live on Facebook Live, it would hit organically far more viewers than what you had if you put up a VOD. So people wanted to go live. In fact, it was also that you would get even more viewers if you use mobile. So if you broadcasted to Facebook Live with a mobile device, it would virally go out to more people. And so we got really good at. That's why we had all those rigs of mobile device, with mobile devices with electrosonic, inputs and, all this other stuff that we would rig around the iPhone so that we would get the most organic views. And then we got to a point where we would literally take a TV and we would build this rig that would hold the iPhone pointed at the TV with a big tent around it, that would just shoot the TV. And then we just cut, then we just edit and play out to the TV, and the iPhone streams it for us, and it would still show up on the platform. And that's, by the way, that is the one way that you can stream to Instagram without breaking the terms of service, is that so Instagram, if you use Lula TV, so Lula.tv is the way that you can stream to Instagram. So Instagram only does mobile, right? It only allows mobile, but it has a backdoor. And there's a couple different ways to hack that backdoor, and it does technically break terms of service, which is why I highly recommend all of you try it. All of you should go to Lula.tv and you should do it. So it is your mission. My homework for you over the next week is to try it at least once, if not twice, if not do it every day, because I'm trying to I'm trying to get Instagram to make a decision that they're either going to shut the hole, so that no one can do it, or they're going to open it up and let us all use RTMP. So what my new mission is that we all start streaming to Instagram using Lula.tv. And by the way, I don't know the guys at Lula. I'm probably actually going to ruin their business model by doing this. So I'm not doing. If you think I'm doing them a favor, I am not doing them a favor, because it's Lula, LOOLA.TV.
Yes.
And what you should do is all start streaming to it, because we want to start flooding Instagram with illegal streams, because they need to make a decision. Right now, they've just kind of like don't ask, don't tell. Yeah. And I want them to either block the RTMP so no one asks me about it again, or I want them to open it so all of us can use RTMP. And I think that's what would happen. I think that if it started being used a lot and it became more public, so you're going to see me tweeting about it. It's mostly because I'm trying to get them to persuade them that this is the dumbest thing ever, and that they should just let us stream RTMP to.
What I think is amazing, Alex, is that on the back end. Oops, am I getting an echo here? Are you guys hearing me echo?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like your mic.
Is that better? Is that better?
Not really. No.
Oh, I'm over here. That's better. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. What I've been finding is that it's just a hidden RTMP and URL key, basically the key stream URL. And Yellow Duck Yellow Duck can find it. If you go to yellowduck.com, it's set up for just digging into Instagram and pulling it out. But what I find amazing is that we can upload videos on the Creator Studio on Facebook. We can make posts to Instagram on the Creator Studio on Facebook, and we can do live video on Facebook, but they won't let us do live video on Instagram.
And here's why they won't, and why we need to. It's our job to manipulate, push, twist this whole thing, is because we have to make them make a decision that what they're trying to do is keep everybody on the same playing field, and so they don't want people to suddenly be able to do what we want to do, which is use multi-camera and big cameras and short depth of field and all the things that we want to do to an Instagram image. They want to keep it so that artists just feel like they can put it up and it's safe and they can do the thing. In fact, I will admit that there was another platform, not Instagram, that actually said what we don't want is they said Google had this team that did all the Hangouts that made really high-end Hangouts that no one else could do, and it made people not want to use Hangouts because they would try to do it and it wouldn't look anything close to that, as good as the president or as good as all these other ones. And I thought that was funny because I didn't tell them that in the meeting, but I was like, oh, that was.
I was doing that in 2012.
That was my team that did that. That was our job. So
I get it.
But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to stop us from doing that. And I just think, again, I think that they should either close it so no one asks me again for Instagram, and we just tell them Instagram is Instagram. Now, again, but the one loophole, there's two loopholes in this process that will not break the terms of service. One is taking the phone and pointing it at a TV, perfectly parallel to the TV, perfectly framed, with a tent, with a black doobie tent.
And they sell devices for that purpose. You can buy them on Amazon and eBay.
You can buy a phone tent like that.
Yeah,
that'll shoot the monitor?
there are companies. They're selling rigs that are specifically designed to get around that mechanism and to solve that problem that way.
The second one is you can buy hardware devices out of China that look like an Android phone. So they have HDMI in, they have HDMI out. It's a little box, and they're like $90, and they will look like it's an Android phone, right? And so so then you can have your HDMI. And the problem is they're doing something with the video. They don't like the HDMI coming in. Android doesn't understand what that is, and so it's all stretched out. And you have to have some kind of scaler to kind of scale your. The only way we've gotten it to work is that you run it into a scaler, and you have to kind of re-squeeze the video. And so you send it like a circle and a couple of things, and you re-squeeze it until everything fits back together the way it's supposed to, because it's all stretched out. And as long as you have that scaler, it'll go right through and it'll look just fine. But it's like I got a $4,000 scaler or $2,000 scaler going into a $60 device makes me feel stupid. And so I've played with it, but I haven't used it. And I wish I've been trying to persuade Blackmagic to do it. Like, you just build one. Like, you got the web presenter, just make it look like an Android device and send it out. And I haven't gone that path.
Circling back around to Mickey's question, though, about the value proposition of live playout versus actual live or versus VOD. Of course, you've seen YouTube does this now, right? They decided they found a bunch of guys doing live play out, particularly of at least I've seen, particularly of SpaceX content, because they don't copy strike those things, and
Right.
they can just run them, forever, and it looks live, and so it draws clicks,
Well,
which is great. But the thing is, so YouTube then decided, all right, well, we're going to provide the premiere mechanism. Their value proposition there is you get a large number of participants viewing it at once, and you get the live chat stream and greater participation. Problem is YouTube hasn't gotten their act together with regard to notification, and that's been the big debate among the big YouTubers out there, that they aren't getting the eyeballs that they would expect when using the premiere mechanism for live playout versus just doing something live or just VOD.
Well, in general, I think notification is the Achilles heel of everybody. Like that is the thing. Like you want to be able to get to the people who say that they're interested in your content, and there just isn't right now a great mechanism to make that work. I think that but I think you're absolutely right. The idea of having a unified experience where everybody sees it all at the same time, they can chat with each other, they can discuss it, is the real value of doing a live play out. Now, some people do it again to leverage the platform, which isn't as important as it used to be. But you're right that the unified experience is, I think, probably the biggest reason that people do it now. Grant, you were going to say?
I was going to change topics if that's fine.
Go for it.
So as a case study, last night I did an education Zoom/live stream. 4 presenters and 2 panelists, so 6 people on Zoom, and then live streaming to about 60 people. The 60 people had a text message question system that would pop up on the screen of the panelists, and away they go. And worked quite well. We've done quite a lot of those. The feedback is from the conveners, the panelists, is that they just want everyone in Zoom. So they want all those 60 people in Zoom, possibly kind of like what we're doing now. What do you think? What's your take on that?
Well, we started that way. I mean, you've been here since you were. Grant, by the way, for everyone, is the actual OG. He was actually beat a couple other people by minutes. So the very first person that registered for this. So Grant has seen them all. We started with everybody in the room. The problem is that everybody isn't really ready for video. So it's kind of a weird thing because, well, especially in Zoom, and if you're doing meetings, it's slightly different. But the issue is that as you use the webinar system, having the Q&A, being able to actually gate things as people come in, if you're really managing we're not managing it as tightly as we could. But we are. It would be difficult to just come in and bomb this. It wasn't at the beginning when we added everybody just willy-nilly. We added everybody in, everybody in. We had some issues, so we don't do that anymore. But at the same time, one of the things that I feel like is that I want to make this. I think of everybody on the stage, and that's why I pick at people. By the way, Colin, that I'm picking at you. It's because I like you. You're standing on stage, and so
I'm ignoring you, sir.
But the reason that I'm picking on people is because it's not that we are in the room together. We think of ourselves in the room together, but we're not. It's as if we were on stage together. So it's how do we want to present ourselves on stage? And so what you're asking everyone who participates in the panelist area to be someone standing on stage. And I think that there's a number of people that aren't interested, like Colin H down here hasn't. He's just been hidden, and so we'll just we're going to change him back to an attendee. See, there you go. So anyway, so the maybe that was another Colin. That's very odd. Anyway, so
I wonder if that was another instance of me, because originally I came in as Colin H, way back in the early. Interesting.
I can't figure out. We saw that.
That would explain Chris's issue earlier, where he came in twice without.
Yeah, I haven't quite figured that out yet. Anyway, so the point is that with that one exception, and Shannon, who's managing things on the back end, it's nice to have something that is nice. Like we were here at the beginning when it was this hodgepodge of some people had their webcams on, some people didn't have them on, and some, and it was, and people had really bad audio and some people had good audio and everything else. It's a better show when everybody's got reasonably good bandwidth and good audio and all those things, starts to tighten that whole process up. So I think that we have to remember, like, I've worked on some events recently in Zoom where they brought everybody in. It's like 90 people and they are not techie, and they are, and it's just, it hurts. Like, it just hurts, and some of the teachers aren't quite as, they don't have quite the same connection. And especially the attendees that are every 4 frames and they've got bad audio and all this other stuff, it ruins the experience for everyone. So as I look forward, I mean, we kind of just found our way to where we are now, where, we have a group of people who are, they self-select, they come in and they've got good audio and video, and it's a better show for everyone. So there's 100 people here. I mean, if you're in attendees, you don't see the number, but there's 100 people here tonight. And for the 70 people that are in the attendees, I think it's a better show than if everyone was breaking up and sounding bad and everything else. And then those folks in the attendees have self-selected. Well, this is the first time or second time they've come, but they've also self-selected themselves to not, they're happy just watching and typing in questions rather than being on stage, and they really, again, you want to think of them not as on stage, not as in the room together. George Kennedy, you were going to say?
It's a little bit of what we're talking about tonight. I pretty much didn't have a techie meltdown, but I was watching the BET coronavirus whatever relief. And one of the biggest reggae artists, some of you probably know Buju Banton, but they had him a live performance from Jamaica, but it was utterly just terrible. I mean, to the point when he got done, you could see him holding his head to say, what the heck just happened? But I don't understand why we keep on doing these events. First of all, it wasn't live, and they claim it was live, but it was just a hot mess, and I almost lost my mind because it was just crazy.
Well, and part of it is that but also that live is hard. Like, it is, people don't realize that live is a beast. Like, it's like this angry beast that you have to, you're like as a bucking bronco that you have to get on and you have to hang on and you cannot fall off. And it's just, and you just have to understand that. But people who do production think that they understand. Oh, I can do live because I do film or I do commercials or I do whatever. It's just an entirely different set of muscles. Like, it's not even you're not even in the same ballpark of the type of thing. And I came from film. I worked in ILM and Lucasfilm, so I knew a lot. Completely different set of skill sets, and so much of it is logistics. Like, so much of it is that I have to have, like, we had 100 and some assets that we had to play out for today. It was 12 hours, and there's all these assets that they played out between all the live hits. And my last 3 days was just pounding on people going, I need the assets. I need the assets. I need the assets. And, and they didn't understand why I was asking for the assets. The deadline, the drop dead, like pull an all-nighter, I need my assets, was 2 days before the event. Like, not right before the event, because I knew that some of the assets aren't going to work. And then some of them aren't going to play back. And some of them aren't, and they're still going to take too long. And I can't be loading in 100 and X number of assets 10 minutes before the show, and so, because I know that once the show goes, once the machine is running and it's going down the path, there's only so many things I can do, and it wasn't me, it was someone else doing that. But the point is that I knew that we as a team are going to be now going down this path, and we have too many variables that's going to come apart, and that we're just going to get blamed for it. It's not going to be that the other team didn't get it to us. Like, it'll be our fault that it came apart, and so you just have to think about it in a whole different way. And I think that what happens when you see that things come apart, that's a media team who's good at concerts, or they were good at film or commercial, but didn't understand, like, and where you mostly see it fall apart is audio, right? Was it audio was the hot mess, or was it video?
I mean, the whole thing was, and my poor wife was sitting there just looking at me like, why are you ranting and raving? The whole thing was just a mess. It was just put together in little pieces, and it just stunk. And that blew my mind is they had him in behind a glass shield and he was trying to perform with a pianist outside. But then I'm looking in the glass and you could see like the crew members just sitting around, and you could see all this mess in the frames.
Right. And part of that is a lack of logistics, lack of planning and rehearsal. Because if when you rehearse it, you see all those things, and people think that, oh, they're just able to play, but they don't realize that the whole until you do live fire, you know, and you're seeing the stuff, you're going, oh, right, I can't. The closer you can get your rehearsal to the real thing, the more you're going to see. The best team is going to see things that they wish weren't there. You know, I don't like that angle. I don't like this. I don't, you know, fix it. The second thing is people mess up audio, and the third thing they mess up is comms. You know, comms are just like the show we did today. Everybody, you know, everybody's distributed. No one's in the same place. And all we did was set up a LQ box. I don't know if you guys have seen these little LQ boxes. I didn't have anything else to put together. So ClearComm has this thing. I think I actually have it. Let's see if I can pull it up here. So, you know, this is the LQ box. I think I have this one. I was trying to attach. It wasn't working, but so this is an LQ box here. And what this does is it supports a app called Agent IC, which we didn't know about for a long time. We didn't know it supported it. So if I start this up, this is that is a comms panel that's on my phone. And it'll work on your iPad, your iPhone, your Android. And it's a little comms panel with everybody's name, and you can slide it. And so instead of that whole like we're gonna call a bridge, like I'm just like, oh no, we can't do the bridge thing. Like I can do up to 16 PLs with this thing, and with a full ClearComm box, I can do point to points and PLs. And you may think that that's crazy, but man, when you get comms working and you got your IFBs and you can talk to all the people individually, and you can break teams up, and you can do all the things that you need to do, your whole show is a different show. Like when you can talk to each other and talk to the people that you need to talk to when you need to talk to them, and listen to the people that you need to listen to at certain times and turn them off when you don't want to listen to them, it is an entirely different experience. And almost every crew that begins, that's a production crew, like they might know walkie-talkies, but walkie-talkies and comms are what live people use while they're setting up the gear. You know, it's kind of like you use the walkie-talkies
are what you use to talk about the comms while the comms are going up.
Exactly. While you're putting the comms in, you're figuring out what's going on. You do that, and we have a lot of meetings about comms. You know, to figure out what all those pieces are, and they're more important now than ever. But I bet that they had a breakdown in all of those areas. You know, is most likely, and that's where crews that don't do this live, you have issues. Scott Greer said the Boxcast is also good for play out, and I haven't used it, but it's a good product. It's definitely a good product.
There's a lot of them out there, Alex, and I'm actually going to be bringing one to the table again soon myself, which is new. And there's some other things that are out there that are like marketing products that are software based, where you can use YouTube playlists and upload your videos to YouTube, and then string in a playlist of YouTube.
You're coming in really quiet. You're coming in really low.
I know. I'm over here.
You started off so well.
So
started off so well, and then it just came apart.
I'm switching all kinds of gear and software over here. I've got a new 2U over here that I'm putting back
So
together.
I just want to point out, you're breaking all the rules of doing an event. The event is you get into feature lock, and then you just stop messing with it until the end of the event, and then you mess with it between the events, not
then you
during
sound like
the
crap,
event.
I know.
That's all I'm saying. I don't. Nate, did you have anything to add to George's comments?
No, I think you hit it spot on. The comm thing is so true. The only people using walkie-talkies is the A2s generally, because they're moving around setting up effects mics, and they don't have necessarily wireless comms as much, but on a typical TV truck. But no, live is a different animal if you're not used to doing it. So
yeah,
and especially in these days with all these remote, bringing in a bunch of remotes. So.
And the thing that has saved us a lot is the Agent IC app, because we'll have ClearComm. You have ClearComm all set up, and you're doing all the things in a regular, just all the hardware and everything else. But if someone's really far off, just have them put it on their phone, and now they're just using cellular, and they can just wander off like they would have a walkie. The only issue you get into is battery. Like it's, if we're going to send someone out with a phone during an all-day event, we give them like 2 or 3 batteries like that hook to the phone, so that they can kind of.
I've also had trouble having ClearComm and RTS talk to each other. It never seems to work as well as it should. I know that they have the dip switches and things to be able to do that, but and most broadcast trucks are all RTS. So
yeah, Yeah, that's
that usually comes from A2s that don't really know how comm works. They sort of do, but not really.
Marty being the one that does like makes sure my comms work. so when we have to wire it, and they get complicated, like having someone like Marty on set makes a big difference, because we've had things, and Marty didn't do this one. I think it was John Saunders that did it. But when you have people that really understand, like to me, an EIC has to truly understand the wiring, not like the plugs, but the wiring and the electronics and how it all interacts. Like we had one where we were shooting. It was a Discovery Channel. It was during Shark Week, and there was a diver who's taking questions while she's from a hangout, while she's underwater with sharks around her and stuff like that. And her dive thing just had a whole different set of wiring. Like it was like not comms, right? And and the producer looked at it and said, "Well, I guess we're not going to be able to talk to the diver." We were like, "We have to be able to talk to the diver." They're trying to figure out how to draw things put it on a piece of glass or something, and we were just like, "No, we got this." John pulls out a soldering iron, and built a cable that connects the comms and put the proper resistance in, all the things that you need to do so that cable and that helmet worked. And so having someone like that, it's a lost art, but having someone like that on set, and a lot of broadcast trucks, there's always one or two people like that are there. But on smaller jobs, you don't end up, you don't think that that's important. But for me, it's always been like having someone like Marty for that kind of medium to large job before it gets to the truck has been, kind of the secret
JT
weapon.
mentioned in chat Unity, and I know you've mentioned it as a solution in the past. Can you quickly compare and contrast Unity and the RTS and the other system you mentioned?
Unity's a lot less expensive, and it's more flexible. So it's less expensive, more flexible. I don't like the app. Like that's the problem that I have, is that it only does PLs. I don't think it really does point to points, and it's got this little circular app that makes me it just makes me angry. And so you can
do point to point.
You can't do point to point, but it's still got that little circular thing, right? That circular thing.
Yeah, you drop out
insane.
and you see all the users. When you drop to another screen, you see all the users, and then you can point to point.
Right. Yeah. But
so that round thing is weird.
It's just weird, and when you're I will admit, Creature Comfort holds back comm systems all over. The reason that RTS is used or Readle, like I don't like Readle buttons. Like I don't like them. I don't like the way that they feel. I don't like the way they work, and so I don't like the Readle buttons. The RTS ones are fine, but I always feel like RTS's technology is way behind, and so there's kind of like this, mix and again, once you've done it a bunch of times, you're really picky. Like if I'm going to choose something, I'm always going to choose ClearComm because I'm really comfortable with it. Like I understand, and I realized that I gave all these people Agent IC, and different people were having different problems with it. And I realized that after a couple hundred events, I just stopped having problems because I go, oh, if you lose everybody, you just go out and come back in again. I don't even think about it. Like I'm just working away, and someone calls me and it screws up its connection, and then I realize I also use a phone that I turn off the cellular so I don't get any calls. So I don't, but you realize that you kind of work around whatever the system's limitations, actually are. Mickey, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, for the LQ system, do you need to create VPN tunnels, or does it just work over the internet?
No, so the way you do it with it, and I'll give you a little tour of this. Let's see here.
Hey, Alex?
Yeah?
When you have a second, could you check your text message for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the, yeah. Go ahead and just hand it back. Yep. So let me show you this, I am now the host. So you guys are going to see grid here, but I'll have to remember to pin it. So let's see here. So I'm going to spotlight me. Am I spotlighted for you guys now? Because I've got two screens, I don't know.
Yes.
So anyway, all right. So let me make sure I don't. So this is what the LQ box looks like. I don't know if you guys can see that. Like here we go.
We're seeing it, Alex.
Can you read it is the question. So anyway, so obviously the passwords I'll never use again because I just showed them to you. But if you look at this, so what I have here is I have accounts. So I set up these accounts. I can have up to 8 on this box. You have to pay for them, but they're there. And then these are the assignments. And so these are all the channels. I have up to 16, but these are all the different channels that I have that I want to be able to talk into. And so as I open one of those channels, I now have them available, and then you have roles. And so you say, well, like mine, I have all the channels, right? And so these channels.
This GUI is from the local box.
I am talking to a box in the box that I'm talking to right now is that I'm linked. Literally, you're watching me linked into is in Virginia, and I'm in California. So it does have to be on a public IP if you're not so if you're not, the box itself has to sit on a public IP in some way, shape, or form if I want to be able to get to it. I know now I'm going to take down YouTube. Anyway, so
YouTube has gallery.
YouTube has gallery? That's interesting.
Correct.
Anyway, so I have all these, so I can
Alex,
basically.
the attendees aren't getting a pin screen. You're not seeing that.
I'm happy to. Do you want me to switch, Alex? I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to hand it to you. Hold on one second.
That's more a personal preference on your own screen to change it to the speaker view versus the gallery view.
But the people on YouTube don't get a choice. So.
No, I know that. I get what you're saying.
Let me just give me 1 second here. Oh, there we go. That's better.
Yep.
Let me make you the host. Okay, and then I'm going to turn off my spotlight. I thought when I spotlight on mine, it would still do that, but it doesn't do that. All right. Anyway, so are you guys getting it now, or is it going to YouTube as full screen now? Does anyone know? Okay, good now. All right, good.
It's not full screen for me.
Now it's full screen.
It's a delay. It's there now.
If you're a panelist, then it's you're on your own. If you're a participant, then the attendees can now see full screen. So let me go back. So you have this, and this is I can assign it to any of 6 LQs. I'm in it right now, so you can see that the status is here. I then have assignments, which are the channels that are, so these are all the different channels that I have here. And then basically I can go into roles, and these roles, each person. So this is what I literally, if I change, for instance, if I take this one and I say I want to move it over, it'll now be this, in the list of on my panel, and it'll happen instantly. So, anyway, so these are this is kind of how you can control it, and you can have up to 16 PLs and up to 8 people connected to that system. And again, that system is it's really easy. Their documentation is horrible. So the first time you have it, there's a lot of swearing and frustration, and you feel like an idiot. And then once you get used to it, you're like, oh, I just pull, make all the stuff go really fast. And so that's how I set my comms up, again, because I'm comfortable with it, and I do that. But Unity is a lot easier to set up that way. It's more flexible. It does Dante. It'll tie a bunch of stuff together. There's a bunch of things, and it's just the only thing that keeps me from using Unity more often is because of that little app thing that drives me crazy, and that becomes a problem if you're really used to it. So, but I think that Unity is a very valid one. I haven't played with the Unity cloud, which I think is really interesting. I'm kind of surprised that Clearcom hasn't gone down that path too, where you just don't have to have any of the hardware, because that's what I'm using all the time now. Is I'm building these things in the cloud, and I have comms everywhere, and it's but really figuring out how to do that is pretty useful. Dior said, following from Grant's question, your thoughts on running both all-in meeting and simultaneously live streaming as a backup solution for those non-techie types. Well, that's kind of what we're trying right now. We're mostly streaming it to YouTube. If you're watching YouTube, hi. We're streaming to YouTube because some people are really sensitive about Zoom. So we stream it to YouTube so they can see what it looks like, and maybe they'll get over it, maybe they won't. We'll see. I think that we just saw a big update from Zoom. My prediction is in the next 3 to 6 months, Zoom will be probably the most secure thing ever, because they're trying to fix it. So I feel like we're probably on the right train. There might be some hiccups as they kind of figure that out, but I'm not too concerned about that.
If you want to watch the video, it's on YouTube.
For the new update.
The new client will be client 5. It will roll out this weekend.
Right.
And we'll have much higher encryption.
Right.
All clients will work for the month, but on May 30th, or how many days is May? 30 days, September, April,
Right.
June, November, May 31st. Then you'll have to have client 5.
Right.
Or-
That's great. Yeah. So they're tightening it all up. And then Colin said, what's the comm app that Alex likes? And the one I'm using is ClearComm. These little LQ boxes. Again, much more expensive than buying Unity. So if I was going to get started, if I didn't have a ClearComm and I didn't have the money to invest in that, I would probably be using Unity for a lot of that stuff. And we played with it. And again, I think that it's not fair to compare Unity to ClearComm, because the ClearComm is a minimum. This box that I'm using is a $6,000 box that does that. And the Delta that we're installing right now is probably $30,000 with the cards. And so it's not fair to say that Unity is the same. Unity for a couple $100 is going to go a long way, and for $1,000 will let you organize an entire team. So it's
even cheaper, $20 per user. So you pay $60 for the cloud, for Unity Cloud. $60 gets you 3 users for 3 months. It's pretty good.
Right. Yeah. So it's an incredible deal. So I think that. And we'll play with that a little bit more as kind of an intro thing there, that to kind of take a look at that. Dominic said that what is the better software for live streaming on the Mac? Is it Ecamm Live or OBS Streamlabs? Or is Ecamm Live or OBS Streamlabs good? I think they're both good. I don't have a strong opinion about it. The live stream I know that we did with I'll get to you and Colin in just a second.
I have comment, Alex.
Yeah.
The virtual cam driver for OBS does not work on a Macintosh.
The virtual cam driver, yeah. Well, for Zoom, but I'm just saying if you're just streaming, OBS works fine.
No, for anything, the virtual cam driver is non-existent for a Mac.
But if you're streaming and you just have webcams or
if you're doing
running
through RTMP, you're fine. Yes.
Yeah, if you're just doing RTMP out or whatever, that's fine. Yeah, if you're trying to put it into something else, sure. But I'm just saying, as a streaming solution, OBS is free and you can do Ecamm is not very expensive. Wirecast is good. So these are a bunch of different options, and I think all of them have. And again, the only thing that, if you kind of do what I call keeping your elbows in, which is that the only thing you want to do is you want to constantly look at, like, what am I doing and where is the CPU usage going as I do those things? And if that CPU gets over about 50%, you should start thinking about, I don't have enough computer, or I'm asking it to do too much, or I don't, but getting it over 60%, over 50% is in danger, because what happens is you're going to add something else and suddenly it's going to spike up. And once most of these get to 70, 75%, you're going to start seeing frame loss. You're going to start seeing, other things, instability, crashing, all those things happen once you get over 70, 75% on most of these apps. When the computer gets to that, you start to see some problems. Now I built this really beefy 4K encoder and then turned it into, kind of an online editing tool. And it turns out if you build something from scratch for about $5,000 or $6,000 on a PC and you load it up with everything you could possibly do with it, I'm having a hard time getting over 20%. Like, it just sits there like, yeah, I got that. Like, what else do you want me to do? So if a big PC will take you a long way. So it's definitely, you can get PCs to go with that headroom, but you just really want to think through that process as you build it. George, you had a comment?
Yeah, I almost feel. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you loud and
Yeah,
clear.
you're good.
I almost feel like I've reached the bottleneck with Macs. I mean, I've been on Macs for maybe like 20 years now, because even looking at a new 15-inch MacBook Pro or even the basic iMac, you almost need to go to the Pro to really be able to do, if you're going to use software for live streaming. At that point, you might as well go to hardware. I mean, there's trade-offs right now for what we're doing. We're here, so you almost have to use software for certain things. But I feel like it's time to go to PC, because Macs are like.
I have to say that what we talked about a little bit in the last show, and what we're going to hopefully talk about more in the near future, is, for me, again, I like to have things as separate components, because if I have something, again, for the kind of work that I do, I want to separate it out, because I want to compartmentalize failure. Like, that's really what I think about, is if something breaks down, I want that piece to break down. I don't want my whole show to break down. And from a streaming perspective, for me, the thing that just really solved that problem for about 80% of my shows. There's some shows that I do that the encoder has to be a really big encoder to do. And I won't get into the why. I can't get into why, but there's a reason that $130,000 encoders exist that are still that reason. So this is what I'm about to say. It doesn't replace those encoders, but because you have to put a huge ladder with a lot of data, and it really all has to come out of the same encoder, or it'll be difficult. So for those huge lifts, that's really important. But outside of that, for a basic, I'm going to have a mezzanine file that needs to go into the cloud. The new link from AWS it's pretty nifty. It's a reliable UDP uplink 1080p 60 to the cloud, and once you get into the Elemental Media Live, you're now you can send it anywhere you want. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting solution for a lot of people. There's definitely reasons that you can't do that for some things, but I think that's going to, if you're thinking about software, that's still a piece of hardware that you have to buy, but you buy it once and it's you're rocking and rolling with a lot of that. Colin, you were going to say something?
Alex George. Oh, sorry. Quickly, for everyone that's here, that most of us have AWS accounts already, or Prime accounts, I would highly suggest going and check out, even if you don't go over to Media Live or any of the other products, I would highly suggest you go check it out. There's educational components to it too, so you could get a lot of training also. Just going in and playing around Media Live and actually breaking down the specs and the encoders that they have built in, or the setups, it could give you a lot of knowledge outside of what you're doing, even if you don't use AWS.
Yep. Colin, you were going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that I'm primarily a Linux and Mac shop for the last 25 years. And I'm now coming around to George's way of thinking that Windows is the preferred platform for software encoding, just because you can get a beefier machine, and you can get for the price, and you have a wider variety of software to choose from. So
yeah, I think that if you're going down that path, I think I've got a couple PCs that are doing some of that stuff as we do R&D. We did run into, by the way, just to kind of keep the saga of figuring out how we want to bring in remote folks. Today's show, we actually ended up using, just because of the requirements of some of the bits and pieces and the time we had to set up. I say all this about hardware, but we ended up using the live stream studio box, which turned out to be pretty good as far as bringing a couple people in and doing playouts. There's a couple issues, but it worked out pretty well. Neural net, we did find a pretty devastating bug that we're trying to figure out how to solve, which is we use Dante for everything, and we found that there's a bug that popped up that overmodulates to the returns, and I think that's a big deal for us. Like, it just means that you're going to suddenly send back to everybody that's connected to you really crunchy audio. Did you guys see any of that, John? Did you see any of that?
My demo ended yesterday.
Yeah, he just ran off. It just ran out. We gotta get back on there.
So that was.
Can we just call him and see if we can get some extended demos, maybe from NeuroNet? Yeah. I think that's a possibility here.
I guess my current thinking right now is I'm still excited about it, but I don't think it's quite. The meat's not all the way cooked. Like it's still coming together. I think that I can see like 3 months from now, 6 months from now with a little bit more work. I have a feeling that they were going down the right path and then are trying to go faster because of the current opportunity. But I think that it's a little early, in that process. I think a couple people that I've been talking to that are testing it are a little. It hasn't been the smoothest experience. It's still better than the Skype TX experience that we're having, but not as good as it could be. There's part of me right now that just wants to put a blade in for every Skype connection and just have 4 boxes the way Leo has them in Twit and just call it a day. Just stop thinking about it.
Has anyone been doing much experimentation with the new Skype NDI Connect? I'm just curious because I'll be testing it this weekend. I was just curious if there's anybody else doing so. Maybe we can compare notes.
I was trying to test the NDI from Skype to Mimo, and I might have to start a call, but it wouldn't show up. So on the Mac, it wouldn't show up on my in Mimo Live. The phone, the HX camera from NewTek or whatever just pops right on. Like it just immediately is on and good. The one thing I did notice is there is something genius about Skype that I don't know when they put this in. I think I had an older version because I've been kind of trying to avoid updating. They have a blur background and change background in the camera settings. And I realized they are keying the footage before it goes to the cloud, which is
They are
super smart.
It looks
You
pretty
know,
cool too. It's a little different than what you would expect.
It looks much better.
Yes,
because they're keying it before it gets
spatial.
all beat up.
You
It's
get
not
that
perfect.
spatial feel though. It's kind of neat the way it puts you forward from the image a little bit.
Right, and I can make this one, like for instance, the one that I have behind me, I could blur it more, and it would do.
Yeah,
I could do the
true.
same thing. I tried to make it look natural, so mine is. I actually use the same lens, same height, same everything, so that it would, so people don't feel like I'm doing something goofy. Most people, until I until I do that, most people just assume that I'm in a room that looks like that, and that was the goal, in that build.
Did I hear correctly that they opened up the number of callers that Skype can accept now through this COVID thing rather than just the 4? Or was that not? I heard a rumor.
Actually, they did a little bit earlier, and then they kind of, in true Microsoft form, were like, "Oh yeah, we can do that." And it's like this half-hearted press release where it's like, "Yeah, kind of, not really."
That's what.
Is anyone using the? Hector asks if anyone's using the NUC in production. No one.
That is the Nook PC, the hardware.
The new unit of computing. That's a fun part, but what would you do? That's an older
machine. Sorry,
I saw one. There was an installation that we were doing a stream from, and they had 28 of these Nooks all like lined up, and each one was running a screen that was all, that was all there. And I thought that it was a wondrous little thing, but that's the only time I've seen the Nook in production. Mike, you were gonna.
It's for people who want to not invest in a Mac Mini. But to his point though, we actually did run, and this is 20 years ago now. We used to run flat screens, and these are plasma screens back then, where we mounted a little mini ITX board, just the board and a power supply on the back of the thing. And I had some software that would push basically more or less PowerPoint slides to the thing in whatever order and to present in whatever way we wanted to across, I don't know, like 50 screens or something like that throughout the facility.
Yeah.
And
so a video wall basically is the only
computers
use.
are great for that sort of thing, but don't try to overtax them. It just
that's the case with all computers. Is don't try not to overtax them. Now Brent asked what my thoughts were on SRT. Hey Brent, I think SRT is about 90 to 95% as good as Zixi, and I think that it's about twice as good as FEC. So that's
really clean, but it's a little slower. You're about 100 milliseconds behind on relay time to get it across the circuit.
Yeah, and
Alex,
I think
I wanted to mention that one thing that you mentioned years ago is that everybody's building their own Mac, which is what I did through various variations that I haven't quite ever put a fork in yet. But I mean, you can get the PC hardware and make it into a Mac, and add as much IO.
Yeah,
right.
It's never going to work quite the same way. Like the stability's. Again, for me, what I worry about the most is stability. Like all I care about is the thing. When I put my hand on the thing, I want it to be there. And so you'll find that I there's a lot of things that I experiment with, but when I'm going to do something that someone pays me for, I think I get much less adventurous really fast.
Well, yeah, you were mentioning this in the days. You were mentioning this in the days when the Mac Pro was just the little tower. And now you got your real Pro that you wanted, right? So
yeah, I mean, this is, but even like with hardware, when I think about building the stuff, I was trying to, we were talking about some stuff about how fast I can get a system together, and I said, well, there's getting the system together, and then there's burning the system in, and then there's doing a bunch of events and figuring out what's broken, and then fixing those things, and then there's days and days and days of stability work that I do before I'll say, yeah, I'll do a project. I'm not going to tell a client that I even have it. Like there were things that, we started doing HDR streaming to Apple TVs years ago. Like it was, and we still haven't done it for a client yet, and so we started like figuring that out. And so when I had we started thinking about these things, and it was like eventually somebody's going to want this. And the easiest way to deploy it was for the Apple TV because the app, it was a single unit. Like I don't have to figure out web browsers and other things like that. So it wasn't so much that it needed to be on Apple TV. It was just a known device that I could build a little app for really quickly, and then we could just push at it. And so but we knew that we wanted to try to figure that out, and we figured out lots of things that we still haven't used. But but the key is that we're constantly banging on it and thinking through it and thinking through that process. And I think we do that with a lot of things. One question that Nikolai, and this is going to be it because I think I'm going to have to, we have to get up early in the morning and do this all over again. Does AWS Link support streaming multi-channel audio? I believe it currently supports 2 channels. That's all I can say. Currently supports 2 channels.
Alex, I got a quick question. How often have you had a switcher crash in production, and what's the fallback?
So I have, well, I mean, I've had software switchers crash all the time. That's why I don't use them. So the fallback for when the TriCaster broke in the Roosevelt room was that I looked over at the TriCaster, you know, blew up. I mean, like literally just thumped while Obama was walking into the room. And so the fallback there was fortunately we had a very good TriCaster operator, and while he's restarting the TriCaster, I'm looking at the guy putting the mic on, who was my guy, and I just went like this. Just go real slow, slow, slow. And so he was looking over at me and putting the mic on, and we're just going to get a little, and you know, I think Obama must have thought he was incompetent. You know, like he was just like taking a long time and like making sure it was perfectly straight and doing all the things. And he looked over at me, and then I went like this, and he just said, "Okay, we got it," and he walked off. You know, so it was so he kind of saved me. But that was the first time that I had a software. You know, and with software ones, that's the problem, is the whole show goes away. You know, when it thumps. I can't remember a time when a Blackmagic switcher has crashed. I've had one catch fire, but I don't think I don't think it stopped passing signal. Like you know, and when I say catch fire, it wasn't like flames, but there was smoke coming out of it, and it was still passing signal into the you know, like while there was smoke bellowing out of the top, and over comms, you just hear this, you know, there's the switcher's on fire. Like that's our guys are just so flat. Like there's no, you know, like you just hear this, there's a switcher on fire, there's a switcher on fire. We had one where we had a generator in Utah that started, Marty, if I'm correct, it started pushing square waves instead of sine.
Yeah, it was just getting, I think it was overloaded or something like that, and just was putting out bad.
And so
why I don't like running on generators.
Yeah, so it started putting out bad power, and some of our UPSs caught fire and or caught, you know, started smoking heavily. And I think but all you could hear over the comms, you know, our guys are just so hard that all you hear the comms is like, Marty, we've got a fire in the truck. We got a fire in the truck. Smoke coming out. And that's it, you know, it's just like this flat, you know, like and so you can't really know anything about our guys other than what they're saying, because there's just not a lot of.
That was like when they came and got me out of a meeting because, no, you really need to come right now. Why? There's smoke coming out of the back of the train.
It's like, it's like,
okay, I'll come.
Yeah, but no, so I've had the problem that we have had in the past is communication errors between the panel and the switcher. And that's usually some kind of network error, or we rented a switcher in Melbourne, and what they gave us was a
hacked Grass Valley panel.
They had a Grass Valley panel that had an Arduino controller in it that was then talking to and it didn't work as well as the real panel did. And I think what happened was, I think
called in for help. They didn't tell us it was a grass panel. They just the switcher panel isn't doing this thing. We're going, okay. And finally they said, oh yeah, it's not a Blackmagic panel.
So yeah, and we got the switcher itself, I think, came from Blackmagic. I mean, it turns out when you slowly buy $1 million worth of hardware from somebody, they will lend you things when you come to their country. So anyway, they just lent us a switcher when we were down there, and so we've had issues with that. The 2ME board had a problem with it, where the 2ME board would just lose connection, and you'd restart it and it would come back up. And that turned out to be, we just sent it back to them. They sent me a new one, and it worked after that. But even again, when it comes back to hardware, you lose connection, but you don't lose signal. Like, you know, like in the software from the laptop, you could still keep switching. You know, it was like a hardware interface thing, and that's where my safety, you know, my happy place is that I know that, and you know, we have individual components have all gone bad, but they just don't take down the whole show. You know, that's the distinction.
But then, Alex, you also put something downstream as well, right? I have a safety downstream.
The switcher, usually most of our shows have 2 switchers, and those switchers go into 2 routers, and those routers then are the most recent builds. Those routers are then interconnected with, and the switcher outputs and inputs are interconnected with patch panels. And those patch panels are non-nulling. so like if I want to not non-nulling but non-normal, so basically I don't mean nulling but non-normal, which means that I have to put a pin in them to connect the video. You know, so if I pull pins out of something, and the reason we do that is that when we're working on a really high profile event, that if I want to disconnect the rest of the world, I want to be there are little red pins. There's lots of different color. I'm really into color. And so there's lots of different color pins, but there's red pins. The red pins are the ones that go to the rest of the world. You know, and so if I pull the red pins out, I know that there is zero chance that what's happening on stage is going to go out to the rest of the world. And you build the whole architecture around, you know, that I can pull these out. But by doing that, it means that anything I want from a security perspective, anything I want is there. What you're always afraid of is that I pull a pin out of a patch panel and it starts passing video through from something else that ends up in my show or ends up in a broadcast. Like, and the worst part is it doesn't end up in the broadcast. It ends up in the feed to the satellite truck. So in my little world, everything's working. I got a great show. I'm looking at program, and someone's asking, "Why are you using the wide shot for the whole thing?" Not that that's ever happened to me. You know, where you know you pull a pin out and you end up with a wide shot, and that's somehow, you know. So I like it to be non-normal, so I put pins in everything, and then you can sit there and so in the way it is, if the switcher breaks, there's a router. If the router breaks, we can repin the routers. If the routers and the switchers break, I can still pin an output from a camera. So, like, get the last little bit in there, and there's a camera, you know. And so I kind of think about, you know, that kind of I'm afraid of everything, you know, when it comes to doing those things. So but again, we've had switchers that don't work when we're in the shot. So it's not like they've definitely broken. We just don't have them break typically in the show. We haven't had them crash in a show. Like once they're up, typically with Blackmagic, once they're up, they're running. You know, like unless you do something to them, they're going to keep running. It's the restart and the update, the firmware update, that you just don't know if they're going to come out of that state or not. You know, like, oh, no, that one's dead. And they were so inexpensive, you just bought another one. What?
The great thing about the 2ME is I can have a spare sitting in the rack. You know, the trailer had a couple of spare 2MEs in it because we can afford to carry a spare.
And we had, a lot of times that our little trailer would have 2 or 3 switchers in it because the client would ask for something more complicated. Now we just throw another switcher in to handle some sub switch. And then and then we had another one as a backup, and then we had one where we were doing an esports thing, and we just gave every gamer just got a 1ME switcher, and that way, and then they all fed into a 2ME switcher. There was like 8 switchers in there, but the nice thing about it was anybody could go in and just work on that one gamer to make them look just right, and it wasn't one size fits all. It was the way that they're playing or how they're sitting or whatever. We could refine, you know, each one of those, and that was still for the price of, you know, I had all those switchers and all that control, essentially the equivalent of like a 12ME or something like that. That's all there with independent control and all these other things for the price of one TriCaster. You know, so you know that's the thing. If the hardware wasn't so inexpensive compared to everything else, you know, you'd have it there. So, okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. It's 9:30. We've been here for an hour and a half. So
thanks, Alex.
Everyone go to bed. You have just enough time to get up in the morning. So we'll open the doors.
Yeah,
give
us everyone. Give us all a call, Alex.
Good night, everybody. Take care, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
All the best.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody. Bye.
Good night.
Guys.
And Grant, can you give me back the con? Okay, there we go. Thank you.